Et à la tribune, son Excellence Dr Monique Nsazabangangwa, vice-présidente de la Commission de l'Union africaine, pour son allocution d'accueil. Excellence.
Your Excellency.
Excellence, Nana Ado Dankwa Akufo Addo, président de la République du Ghana et champion des institutions financières de l'Union africaine. Excellence, chef d'État et de gouvernement. Messieurs, Mesdames les ministres, Messieurs et Madame les gouverneurs de banque centrale, Messieurs et Madame chefs des institutions financières multilatérales, membres du corps diplomatique, éminents délégués, Mesdames et Messieurs, je salue tous et chacun au nom de Son Excellence Moussa Faki Mahamat, président.
Commission, and also on my own behalf, I wish to welcome you to this historical event, which aligns to the vision of our forefathers since the establishment of this organization. One of the primary objectives of the African Union is to improve the standard of living of all Africans by fostering inclusive growth and sustainable development of the continent. And to achieve this, increased cooperation and integration of African states is pertinent. The heads of state and government dialogue is a significant step towards achieving this vision and the aspirations of Agenda 2063, our blueprint for Africa's transformation. And this event is the first of its kind in support of continental efforts towards the establishment of the African Union financial institutions with a view to strengthening regional integration and monetary cooperation by promoting coordination and collaboration efforts among heads of state and government and African multilateral financial institutions. We applaud these efforts. We hail the leadership and guidance of you, Your Excellency, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. We also greatly appreciate the unwavering support from the African multilateral financial institutions, the United Nations Center can't be going wrong talking of financial institutions. Indeed, the current global financial system is flawed due to the unequal distribution of power and influence. Hence, the strengthening of our own financial landscape that can also accompany the African Union as we claim our rightful place on the global arena cannot be overemphasized. Moreover, the African financial institutions, these are the African Central Bank, the African Investment Bank, the African Monetary Fund, and the Pan-African Stock Exchange, have the potential to foster inclusive growth and sustainable development of the continent. In addition, the establishment of the African Financial Stability Mechanism through the African Monetary Fund has the potential to cushion the continent from current and future shocks. The establishment of the Africa Club will be instrumental in supporting African Union member states in addressing financing challenges and strengthening support for the continent's transformation and integration. As I conclude, the establishment of these African Union financial institutions is not just about making institutional reforms as reflected earlier. It's a transformative endeavor that has the potential to create a more just, equitable, and prosperous future for our continent. So, as we move forward, let us reaffirm our commitment to solidarity, to cooperation, and to shared prosperity. This is indeed a historical opportunity to reshape the global financial architecture to reflect the goals and aspirations of Agenda 2063. I thank you, Your Excellencies.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Indeed, it is an excellent opportunity to strengthen the continent as we move forward in the turbulent environment in which we are faced today. Allow me now to call on the stage His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the President of the Republic of Ghana, champion on African Union financial institutions, for his remarks.
Your Excellencies, the President of the Republic of Zambia, Ikinde Ichelema, Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I have to apologize by being the last to turn up. I arrived this morning from Munich, and getting ready to come here has been but in any event, the statement is always valid, better late than never. So please forgive me. I'm due to give a report to the plenary on how far we have gone in the establishment of the financial institutions. So that will not be the subject of these brief remarks that I'm going to make here. My concern, and to that extent, I'm proposing a decision for the plenary, is how we can contribute to the reform of the global financial architecture. We're all in agreement that the way the global financial architecture works at the moment, it doesn't work in our favor, and that there is a need to make some fundamental systemic reforms. But making the reforms also requires that we also take some steps that will assist us to have a greater impact in the way in which our economies are financed. And an important consideration that I want all of us to think about is that as it stands, virtually all our countries, we hold our reserves in foreign banks, attracting largely negative rates of interest. The proposal that I'm going to put to the plenary, and I want to share with you, so it will form part of our discussions this morning, is that we should take a decision that a minimum of 30% of the reserves of each one of us, sovereign reserves, should in fact be invested in the African multilateral institutions. I speak about the ADB, I speak of Afro-Exim Bank, which will strengthen their balance sheets and strengthen their capacity also to facilitate more and more resources for our development. It's a relatively radical proposal. There are several aspects of it, of course, that we will have to, if we accept the proposal, we'll have to agree on a mechanism for monitoring how these monies are going to be used, for ensuring that we get proper accountability. All of these things are necessary. But the fundamental fact that if we find a way where we can increase the financial power of our own institutions, we're in a better place to finance our development. Already we've seen the tremendous work that the ADB and the Afro-Exim Bank have made, especially during this critical period of the COVID pandemic and the COVID difficulties. Afro-Exim Bank stood very tall to help us mobilize funds to buy vaccines, to do work. The same with the ADB. So these institutions are institutions which are ours and which we can trust. So if we can find a way of strengthening them, we strengthen ourselves. And that is the proposal that I want to put before the plenary. But I want to share those proposals with you first. That we make a decision that 30% of our sovereign reserves that we're now holding in foreign banks, we will in fact invest them in our own financial institutions, the ADB and the Afro-Exim Bank. And in so saying, I believe that this particular meeting of our organization will see to ratifying the decision that has been taken to make the Afro-Exim Bank a specialized agency of the African Union. It's time that it was done. And there's really nothing that should impede that decision this time. The last time there were procedural matters that made it difficult to make the decision. But I think those procedural matters have been now resolved. So we should be in a position to go ahead and do it. The second proposal that I am putting before you for consideration. We spend a lot of our time going from one country to another, having these summits. We have summits with China, we have summits with India, we have summits with Japan, we have summits with America. We've now had a summit with Turkey. I gather there are other countries that are getting ready. We recently had a summit with Italy. And there are other countries that are also going to have this summit. There's an anomalous situation whereby a particular country has a summit with a whole continent. And all of us troop to these summits because we don't want to endanger our relations with them. If we could find an institutional arrangement for ourselves whereby at least once a year we can meet to talk about the strategic matters that affect our continent, the strategic economic matters that affect our continent, I think it would obviate the need for these peregrinations, the moving around from one country to another, which we're doing. And that is the idea of having every year an annual economic summit. And that itself can be a movable seat. I can see very easily President Ruto hosting the first one. The Zambian president will follow. Ghana will follow after that. But we will do it on a yearly basis, and that therefore becomes the fulcrum around which we on the continent then will deal with the major issues that we have to confront as a continent as far as our economic growth and development are concerned. There are several of us who have Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. We have a problem with the idea of these individual country summits that we have to go through. So that is the second proposal that I intend to make before the plenary. These ideas have already gone through the hierarchy. The PRC, I think, has considered them, and they have also gone through the ministers, and they will be before the plenary for a decision. But all of it is stressing one very important matter. We talk, we criticize what's going on, but taking the concrete actions that will help us break out of the conditions that we are something that we are not doing enough of. And that is the main matter that I want to urge upon us. The statement that is made, God helps those who help themselves, is a statement that I find extremely important and one that is extremely dear to me. God helps those who help themselves. At the heart of it is the whole concept of self-help. So these are the two main decisions of the summit that I intend to seek approval for. But in the meanwhile, I think it's as well that this side event here that we're having should have the first effort to look at them. And in the plenary too will provide me the opportunity to report on where we are in the establishment of the various institutions, the African Investment Bank, the African Monetary Fund, and the Central Bank, the African Central Bank. There are various stages of development of all of these, and we will be discussing them in the plenary. Fortunately, 2 days ago in Accra, a delegation was sent by the president of the State Council of Libya, where the Libyan delegation under the acting minister came to tell me about their commitment to doing whatever they can to establish the African Investment Bank. They've set up a steering committee in Libya, which is now going to focus on the steps that required to be taken to bring the African Investment Bank into being. I was extremely impressed by the effort they had made to come to see me, to give me this reassurance and indicate that Libya is once again taking up its role within the Union as we have known in the past. And in the same fashion, the other institutions too, where they are. At the end of the day, all of these institutions require action on the part of the individual states. We need to ratify the conventions that we have set up. None of them have received the minimum ratifications that are necessary to bring them into being. And that is something that is within our individual state control to be able to do these ratifications in a manner that would then permit the steps that have to be taken to bring these organizations into being. Our criticism of the current international structure is on point, is relevant, but it would be even more potent if, with the criticisms, we are also taking the steps that we show our determination, come what may, to make the steps forward for our economic development and emancipation. So thank you very much indeed. And once again, let me apologize for being late coming here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and indeed you are a man of action. You said it all, and you provided, a clear way forward in terms of what needs to be done to accelerate progress in our strive to reform the global financial architecture, but also to strengthen the African multilateral financial institutions. I would like to recognize once again the presence of His Excellency Mohamed El Minifi, the President of the Republic of Libya, who is with us in the room, and proceed to the next segment of our meeting today. We have 3 presentations. In the interest of time, I think we need to move faster. I will now invite His Excellency Albert Muchanga, the Commissioner for Economic Development, Trade, Tourism, Industry and Minerals of the African Union Commission, to give us a brief on the status of the establishment of the African Union financial institutions. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremony. I salute all their excellencies, the heads of state and government who are with us here in the morning, and also the various delegations participating. There's a large audience, which shows that there's a lot of interest in the affair we are having. I'm not going to give a full status report. That is going to be done by the champion when he presents his report in the assembly. But I'm just going to go through a few figuratives. I'll begin by saying the champion said, God helps those who help themselves. I'll complement that by saying that development is a do-it-yourself process. If you do not do it, nobody is going to do it. So it's the fate of Africa to develop herself. Having said that, if we had the African Central Bank with one currency, the levels of intra-African trade would be higher than they are today, and would be better positioned to attract investments. If we had the African Investment Bank and the African stock market, there will be financial deepening in Africa. The African capital market would be better developed than it is today, and would have borrowers within Africa. And when we establish the African credit agents, that market would develop further. And the constant complaint that we have that when we go to the bond market, we pay higher rates of interest would be minimized. If we had the African Monetary Fund or the African Financial Stability Mechanism, would be better positioned to stabilize our economies. And right now, as I'm speaking, close to 23 African countries are in debt distress situations. And 3 of those countries have defaulted on their debts. So the African Monetary Fund, the African Financial Stability Mechanism would be anchors for financial stability. So having brought out all these key issues which necessitate the importance of having the African Union financial institutions, the task for each and every African Union member states is not to hesitate, but to sign the enabling legal instruments of those institutions, and also to ratify. And when that is done, to mobilize the capital required for their operation. And we have 2 schools of thought here. Some of our member states are saying we need to review the capital subscription formula, because on one hand, they are saying that initial capital was too low. The others are saying the initial capital required is too high. So to resolve this problem, working with the African Export-Import Bank, a study is underway to see what would be the right subscription formula. Then there's also the issue of macroeconomic convergence, the roadway to the African Development Bank. The response levels from member states are very low. We would like you to really submit your responses on time and in full when we send out the questionnaire to say, where are we on the question of macroeconomic convergence? When we have attained the required level of macroeconomic convergence, would be better placed to establish the African Central Bank. And thereafter, we establish the African Union, the African Common Currency. So, if we have to develop on our own, if God has to answer our call, that God helps those who help themselves, let us do it now, without wasting much time. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, and you are right, because it is time for action, as the champion rightly said. And in this, we would like to kindly look at those issues that are hampering our abilities to accelerate progress towards the African Union financial institutions and make sure that we are able to move forward together. With this, I would like now to invite on the stage Dr. Anan Mosi, the Deputy Executive Secretary and Chief Economist of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, for her presentation on Africa's agenda for the global financial architecture reform.
Excellencies, heads of state and government, distinguished delegates, dear friends, it's an honor to present to you today Africa's work on reforming the global financial architecture. If we can go. So, we are at a defining moment in terms of the opportunity to reshape the global financial architecture. First, we have been the world has been facing multiple and recurrent global financial shocks that have really wiped out policy space, led to a crunch in liquidity, and wiped many years of hard-earned development gains and progress on SDGs. Yet, we have a global financial system that is not equipped with the tools to actually deal with these type of shocks. It's more tailored to country-specific shocks. And it does not have an equitable way of accessing these resources. As a result of these type of shocks, an initiative came forward to have the Africa High-Level Working Group on Global Financial Architecture, which was actually established in February 2022, which includes African Ministers of Finance, Economic Development and Planning. It includes Economic Commission of Africa, African Union, African Development Bank, Afrexim Bank, as well as the IMF and World Bank. And we have been meeting regularly to basically amplify the African voice, reach a common position, and advance the agenda. This is really a critical platform to build that position, but also the group asks have been actually supported by the United Nations Secretary General SDG stimulus. And we have achieved really key milestones in terms of the process and reaching that African position. So we had the resolution in global financial architecture that was adopted by African Ministers of Finance during the ECA Conference of Ministers in March of 2023. We have also had this work presented at the African Union 6th Ordinary Session of Specialized Technical Committee, and we had a ministerial dialogue. And we are delighted to have this discussion today. And at the summit, the report of the champion on the STC will be going for heads of state discussion, but also there will be a resolution to actually articulate how the work that has been going on in global financial architecture will actually feature in the modalities of the African Union chair at the G20. The key priorities that have been articulated in the African priority on global financial architecture contain: one, increasing the availability of affordable finance at scale; second, the reform of the global debt architecture; third, the issue of amplifying African voice and representation. Let me take you through, very briefly, through each of these. So, on increasing the availability of affordable finance, here we need to have the MDBs and the development financial institutions play a much bigger role than we had before, increasing the overall lending, including concessional resources. And that also includes concessional windows at the IMF, at the World Bank, and concessional resources available for these development banks that need to be almost tripled to be able to meet both the climate action needs and the SDG investments. To be able to do that, there is a need to actually increase capitalization of multilateral development banks, and at the same time, we need to ensure that the MDBs are actually enhancing the optimization of their balance sheets and taking more risk to actually make progress. Another very important issue is the issue of the criteria on which access is determined for concessional finance. As of now, it's only based on income level. And that deprives countries, for example, middle-income countries that are hit by a climate shock, to actually access any concessional resources. So one of the things that need to be done is to include a vulnerability consideration into that eligibility formula. Another very important area to actually allow reducing the cost of financing is to avail more debt sovereign guarantees and MDB-backed guarantees to actually lower the cost of borrowing. We have seen that before done many years ago, but mostly for political reasons. Now we need to see more done for the common good, for advancing SDG investments, for advancing climate action, and we need to amplify voices on that. And lastly, another very important area is crowding in private sector through de-risking and through blended finance. I'll talk about this very quickly, but it's about strengthening the global financial safety net. The IMF special drawing rights are intended to actually provide, to address the issue of long-term global liquidity and to supplement official reserves. Yet, there are issues about how the system functions. What we need to do is to ensure that the way the decision is done on allocation is analytical and less discretionary and political, just like how it's supposed to be done at central banks. So we need to ensure that this process is done in such a way, but also we need to make sure that these resources go where they are most needed. So currently, how the allocation formula works, bigger countries with better financial resources get more, i.e., those that don't need the resources are the ones that get more resources. And the money we need to change that to make sure that the money goes where it's needed. And second, we have a huge amount of unutilized resources. We have 650 billion US dollars that are sitting unutilized. We need to have that utilized through the rechanneling of SDRs to multilateral development banks to allow them to actually get leverage 3 to 4 times of these resources. So whenever we hear that there are no resources, there are domestic issues, I think that cannot be justified when we have 650 billion US dollars sitting idle at the IMF balance sheet. The next area is about reforming the global debt architecture, and here there's a need to overhaul that G20 common framework, which really has not been common or a framework as we can describe it. We need to have this to be timely. We need to open it to include middle-income countries, suspension of debt service upon application, and this will be really critical to allow to have a functioning debt resolution framework. And finally, the issue of amplifying African voice. We are proud and delighted that the African Union has finally got the African Union seat in the G20. We need to leverage that to advance these reforms. We're really benefiting from the common position that has been established to advance the agenda more. Now we have an opportunity that we didn't have before to move from rule takers to rule makers, and we have to really push forward hard to ensure that this happens. Another area that is very important is to ensure our adequate representation at financial institutions, and here I'm talking about IMF quota reform. It's very important that Africa gets a quota reform, higher quota reform, that it has higher voice in decision making, but also it's linked to resources that would be available. There has been ways of which to kind of, when we push hard for this, to give alternative by increasing the overall resources, which is great, but that doesn't lead to redistribution. So we need to push also on the redistribution. Finally, and this is where we need all our leaders that are here, advocacy matters, and your own really leadership and advancing the agenda will matter for all of us. So we really count on you on speaking in one voice, taking this forward. All the technical work can be done, but without your leadership in really advocating, lobbying for it at various platforms, we're not going to get action. And here we just have kind of a series of timeline of roadmap of opportunities of what is upcoming, and we hope that you will engage with all these partners from G7 to G20 to COP29 to the Summit of the Future to raise these asks of Africa and to really highlight that now we already articulated what we need. We need to get action, and we need to see support from partners to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my dear Anna, and I would like to really salute your leadership in supporting Africa towards the reform of the global financial architecture. The key word that we had today is action, action, and actions. To proceed with our meeting, we are calling upon Mrs. Mavis Owusu-Gyamfi, the Executive Vice President of the African Center for Economic Transformation, for her remarks. You are invited.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Your Excellencies and distinguished guests, with your permission, I'd like to stand on existing protocols and thank you sincerely for your honored presence. Let me begin by expressing my special thanks to the President of my beloved country, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, for convening us all here today to discuss such an important topic. Over the past 3 years, it has become abundantly clear that Africa has to position itself strategically in the global financial architecture. We have to own the narrative of what works for our continent. The late Mwalumu Julius Nyerere, whose statue will be unveiled here tomorrow, aptly stated, "No nation has the right to make decisions for another. No people for another people." We are currently operating in a global financial system that was created in the 1940s to address the challenges of that time. The world is finally rethinking how to make the system better for today's complexities. Your Excellencies, you have an unprecedented opportunity to ensure that the global financial system that emerges from the current reform processes effectively supports our economic transformation, makes space for our rapidly growing markets, and enables you to lay the foundation for a more prosperous future for every African. Dr. Morsi just outlined what Africa is asking for. We are asking for more concessional finance. We are asking for a fairer debt framework. And we are asking for more finance to be invested to help us chart a clear path for green industrialization on the continent. When we talk about the global financial architecture, we often focus on international financial institutions like the World Bank and the IMF. These institutions are a critical part of the financial system we need, but they cannot on their own provide the resources we need to meet the ambitions of Agenda 2063. Mr. President rightly pointed out, we have well-established and well-respected African multilateral financial institutions that have been working with us in good times and bad. I see many of them in the room, many of their leaders in the room right now. Ladies and gentlemen, your institutions are essential for our economic transformation. As such, you must be an integral part of our discourse on the global financial architecture. We have already seen some exciting innovations coming out of your institutions, the AFC, Afri-Exim Bank, and recently the AFDB's subordinated hybrid capital loans. The stronger and more innovative you are, the more you will be able to take advantage of the rapid reforms that we hope will happen globally to support our development. The African Center for Economic Transformation, in partnership with 22 other African policy institutes, is working in support of our national government and regional institutes with analysis and advice on the key issues that should make up Africa's agenda for global financial architecture reform. As a group, we have collaborated closely with UNECA, the African Union Commission, who have worked with member states to drive this agenda. We will continue to engage civil society organizations worldwide to ensure Africa's priorities are central in the advocacy on global financial architecture reform. We have had excellent engagement and ownership at the Ministers of Finance level. And today, we have the honor to be here with you, Mr. President, our heads of states and government, to hear your ideas, reactions, and advice on the way forward so that the global system can truly deliver for Africa. Your Excellencies, your advice, your actions today will help us create a new trajectory for how we engage with the world. As policy institutes, we stand ready to work with you to help move Africa's agenda forward in service for our continent and our people. Once again, we thank you for your time today and wish you fruitful and successful deliberations in the days to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mavis, and indeed you are absolutely right, because if we look at the sky today, you can see that everything is positive for Africa to move forward. So we have to seize the opportunities and make sure that we are able to make the progress that is needed to unlock the potential of the continent. Allow me now, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to call on the stage His Excellency Mohamed El Minifi, the President of the Republic of Libya, for his statement. Your Excellency, you are invited.
فخامة الرئيس اوكي
Excellencies, you can select the channel of interpretation in the small, switch that you have. You can select the channel. It's working. So it's fine. You have interpretation available. Thank you.
اوكي فخامة الرئيس نانا آدو دانكو رئيس جمهورية غانا مناصر الاتحاد الأفريقي للمؤسسات المالية الأفريقية، أصحاب الفخامة رؤساء الدول والحكومات، معالي السيدة مونيك ناتشينزا بانغو نائب رئيس مفوضية الاتحاد الأفريقي، السيدات والسادة الحضور، السلام عليكم. في الحقيقة هناك عدة نقاط أو ملاحظات أحببت أن أذكرها خلال هذه الجلسة المالية التي يترأسها أخي الرئيس الغاني مناصر الاتحاد الأفريقي للمؤسسات المالية. أوكي. هذه النقاط، النقطة الأولى أذكر بأن المادة 19 من القانون التأسيسي للاتحاد الأفريقي نصت على إنشاء 3 مؤسسات مالية أفريقية، وإن قمة أبوجا سنة 2005 أصدرت مقرراً بتوطين تلك المؤسسات. أعقب ذلك توافقات على مستوى الأقاليم بأن تكون ليبيا مقرا لمصرف الاستثمار الأفريقي، ونيجيريا مقرا للمصرف المركزي الأفريقي، والكاميرون مقرا لصندوق النقد الأفريقي. وقد تم اعتماد بروتوكول المصرف الأفريقي للاستثمار في فبراير 2009، حيث انضمت 22 دولة وصادقت 6 دول عليها. النقطة الثانية، دولة ليبيا اتخذت إجراءات تنفيذية لتأسيس المصرف على مستوى البنية التحتية، كما تم التعاقد مع مكتب استشاري دولي في هذا الشأن. والنقطة الثالثة، نحن مع اتخاذ خطوات عملية لتسهيل انضمام ومصادقة المزيد من الدول، مثل إعادة جدولة المساهمات بما يتناسب مع الموارد المالية المتاحة لكل دولة، والتفكير في أدوات مالية أخرى تيسر عملية الانضمام والمصادقة للدول التي لديها عسر مالي. نؤيد كل الخطوات التي يقوم بها أخي الرئيس نانا أوكوفو أدو، وأشكره على استقباله الوفد الليبي الذي زاره خلال الأسبوع الماضي لعرض آخر الخطوات التي اتخذناها في إطار التسريع بتأسيس المصرف ومباشرة أعماله من العاصمة الليبية طرابلس. النقطة الأخرى، على المصرف الأفريقي للتنمية اتخاذ خطوات إضافية لما يقوم به من جهود تحظى بترحيبنا للتعجيل بإقامة هذه المؤسسات. وفيما يتعلق بالورقة المفاهيمية المقدمة من الرئيس نانا أوكوفو، أود بهذا الخصوص بخصوص تأسيس تحالف المؤسسات المالية الأفريقية متعددة الأطراف هو نادي أفريقيا، أود أن أؤكد بأننا نؤيد أي خطوات تعزز الوحدة النقدية الأفريقية وإيجاد صيغ لتأسيس قواعد للعمل الكفيل بمعالجة توفر أدوات تمويل أفريقية ذاتية، بدون أن يؤثر ذلك على أولوية انطلاق المؤسسات المالية ال3 الرئيسية المنشأة من قبل الاتحاد الأفريقي. ويكون حدث هذا اليوم لقاء تشاوري للبدء في مرحلة قادمة من العمل من أجل تحقيق رؤية أفريقيا المالية المستقلة، واستشعارا من دولة ليبيا أولا لأهمية هذا الموضوع، وثانيا لاستقلالية التمويل الذاتي لتنفيذ وتحقيق هذه التطلعات والمشاريع الرائدة في أجندة 2063. وثالثا، إنجاح وتفعيل المؤسسات المالية الأفريقية التي يجب أن ينطلق العمل بها بأسرع وقت ممكن. قدمت دولة ليبيا بند على أجندة مشروع جدول أعمال القمة تتعلق بتفعيل بنك الاستثمار، إيمانا وثقة منها بأن تتحمل المسؤولية بالتنسيق والتعاون مع الدول الأعضاء والمفوضية في وضع هذه المؤسسة الأفريقية الهامة موضع التنفيذ. وعملية التنفيذ تتطلب وجود إرادة سياسية حقيقية للدول الأعضاء ممثلة في التوقيع والتصديق أولا، ودراسة الوثائق والجوانب الفنية المالية والارتباطات المتعلقة بها ثانيا. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those very pertinent and eloquent words. Allow me now to call on the stage one of the most vocal leader on the issue of the reform of the global financial architecture. He has said it all, but we need to listen to him once again to take stock of his wisdom in terms of what we need to do proceeding forward. Your Excellency, maybe you know who you are, so just stand up. His Excellency Samuel Ruto of Kenya. You're welcome on the stage, sir.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, our champion on financial institutions in our continent, President Nana of Ghana, my colleagues, heads of state, distinguished leaders who are here, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you very much for affording me a few minutes to add my voice to the excellent work that has been done by President Akufo-Addo. When you spoke about what we need to do as a continent, it quickly reflected on what we said in Nairobi at the Africa Climate Summit. And we have been consistent, whether it is in Nairobi or Paris or New York or Dubai, where we came from the COP28. Our message has been consistent. And I think today we are very happy that the whole world has come around. There was a time when a conversation about the global financial architecture debate looked like it was an us versus them debate. I'm very happy that today, every capital and North and South have agreed that there is something fundamentally wrong about the global financial architecture. And I think recognition that the problem exists is actually half the solution, because you can't solve a problem if you don't think it exists. I think we have made the case sufficiently, and today every capital believes that there is a problem with the global financial architecture and something must be done about it. And therefore, we must lead on all fronts. And I agree with President Nana that I think he told us, God helps those who help themselves. Let me paraphrase it. The Bible says, faith without works is dead. I mean, you can't believe in something and then you do nothing about it. So this is why the realization that there is something to be done about the global financial architecture, as the people from Africa in this AU setup, we decided in Nairobi that we're not going to take the corner of victims and to try and point fingers and blame game. We're going to do something about it, and we're going to be part of the solution. And I am very happy that this morning, President Nana has made two fundamental proposals which I wholly support. Number one, he has made a proposal that we must empower our own African financial institutions, multilateral institutions. He has made a proposal that 30% of all our reserves that are in all manner of places, earning sometimes negative interest, we should make it available to our African multilateral financial institutions. I agree 100%. It is a step in the right direction, and we are doing something ourselves about it, about the whole global financing, development financing architecture. I also support the proposal that we put a stamp of approval on these institutions and make them AU agencies. They must carry our badge of approval so that even as they operate, they are given the proper recognition that they serve this continent. President Orama here of Pre-Exim knows when I came into office, the first thing, I increased Kenya's shares in his organization because we believe in African organizations. My good brother Tadese there of Trade Development Bank knows we paid more as Kenya into his organization. We must match what we say with what we do. So I am encouraged that Nana is now pushing the whole continent into the space where we can formally and unequivocally support these institutions. I also agree that instead of globe-trotting and going to every other place, we need to organize our own development, financing, economic summit, where we invite those who want to do business with us to come and engage with us. I think it's only fair. We have made good our part of the bargain. We have gone to many capitals. Surely it is time for them to come to ours also. And I think we won't be asking for too much. And I will take up the challenge, President Nana. If it is agreed that that be the case, I will offer to host the first summit. But even as we do this here in our continent, we must never shy away from taking our ideas, our suggestions into the global stage. And that is why Kenya is participating both, and we are co-leading both the task force on international taxation to scale up development, climate and nature action. That task force includes Germany, France, Colombia, and Barbados. We are also engaged in the expert review on debt, nature, and climate. These two initiatives, as we represent our side of the divide, we have made it absolutely clear that we no longer are going to participate in a place where we are given already agreements, rules, regulations made by others. We will only sign onto any regulations or agreements if our input, our ideas, and our suggestions are inbuilt. We have had very tough negotiations because we said we will no longer be passengers. And when we made a commitment that in Nairobi that we are going to be part of the solution, we indeed must be. And so, let me just make two suggestions. You know, there is an attempt, because we have the largest reserves of renewable energy in Africa, there is an attempt to make it look like it is very expensive to unlock these renewable energy resources. But nobody is telling us that on the whole, renewable energy ultimately is much more efficient and is cheaper in the long run. So those who want to tell us it's expensive to upfront investment in renewable energy, we need to tell them, don't tell us half the story, tell us the whole story. That yes, it may be heavy upfront, But long term, ultimately, it is cheaper, it is much more efficient, it is what we must do. And that is why in Dubai, we had the Africa Green Industrialization Initiative, where we decided that it's time to begin to move this conversation on the potential we have in our continent into steps of reality by making sure that we work collaboratively and establish between 2, 3, 4, 5 countries how we can work together to establish green industrialization facilities, look at innovative ways of making sure that we make this a reality. Because ultimately, if we don't do it, those who have other resources will continue to push for what their resources will bring onto the table. We must bargain with what we have. We are a continent of great potential. It is time, not just to say great potential, but to move it into opportunity and take it into investment and bring it into reality. So I am very happy that both at the African continent level, as has been suggested by President Nana, we must do something about us, our institutions, and even leverage on the resources that we have. But we must also influence the global financial architecture by making sure that we become part of the design of the next global financial architecture. Let me conclude by saying that as part of this conversation, I did have a conversation with the president of the World Bank, and we agreed that as a means of walking the talk on concessional financing being made available, especially to countries in the global south, and especially countries with low income who are facing serious and severe debt issues. This year, we are going to have the IDA Replenishment 21 Conference and Summit in Nairobi in April, so that we can also drive the whole fundraising around IDA that is going to give us resources that are concessional and help the multilateral development banks to also get those resources and eliminate hurdles and unnecessary bureaucracies that are limiting access to those finances and even the fundraising of those finances. I want to invite my colleagues, and we will be discussing in the summit how we package our interventions, our ideas on what IDA should look like going into the future, and how we use such instruments to help us raise additional concessional financing that can be accessed by our countries, because IDA is almost 90% countries in the global south who are beneficiaries. So I quite agree with what my good brother has put across, and I look forward to having a conversation with all of us in Nairobi on IDA and working with the rest of the donor community and the international community on how this can be made a reality. Finally, I have said, hopefully in this summit, we will finally endorse the African Club and make these institutions and give them the stamp of approval that they so much need for them to raise resources globally and to be able to support our own development. Let me, in the interest of time, let me leave it there for today. I had something which I wanted to say, which is escaping my mind. But let me say that I'm very happy that we're having this conversation. And by God's grace, I am very confident that with what we are doing now, the actions we are taking, we should be able to be in a better place shortly. Thank you very much.
Excellent, as usual, Your Excellency, and thank you very much for giving those perspectives in terms of what needs to be done to accelerate our development process, taking into consideration the fact that we already have African multilateral financial institutions that are operating within our continent. Thank you. Allow me just to beg your indulgence. I know that we have many other engagements, but I would like to invite on the stage, before moving to the other speakers, the President of the Republic of Zambia, His Excellency Hakainde Hichilema, who is also one of the vocal leader in terms of what Africa needs to do to accelerate progress towards its transformation. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Moderator, President Nana, President Ruto, my brother from Libya, heads of state and government that are here, distinguished leaders of various institutions, our institutions, ladies and gentlemen. First is to thank President Nana for convening this conversation platform, and also to thank the AU, our AU, for availing us a window within a very busy schedule whilst we're here. But also to thank the speakers that have already spoken, the good things that they've said. I totally agree with President Nana's, and we must be bold and take decisions, and also my colleague from Libya, from Kenya, for what they've said. I think the important thing is that we must agree, accept that we had intense debates in the past. We had issues, we have issues with the global financial architecture. Those debates sometimes were misunderstood, gravely misunderstood, especially between the North and the South. I think we are okay now. We are almost on even ground. And on the basis of that, we want to encourage ourselves to move on, to get the job done. I remember when we met in June in Paris, it was a very intense debate. But we are okay with that now. I think checking with colleagues that we interact with individually as heads of state from the North, I sense that we have some convergence. I'm repeating that, so that I lay the basis for us to make progress, to support what President Nana has said. But as we do that, I just want to remind ourselves about the very basics that provoked this debate, that drove the need to change the global financial architecture. As we enhance our own institutions, Africa Export-Import Bank and others, we need to remind ourselves that the combination of the international institutions, our African institutions, the new institutions that we create, must not forget certain basics. Why we drove the arguments. I just want to summarize a few of them. One, we agreed that we are not assessed correctly in terms of the credit risk assessment of our countries, and therefore our continent. And in this package of reforms, institutions, legal changes, we would like this to remain on the agenda of the package of our institutions. that we are not assessed correctly. We are basically given a higher risk profile unfairly. And we should not forget that. One of the reasons that this is happening is because our balance sheets, our economies are not valued correctly. It's just one. Yes, there's issues of political risk, issues of business, exchange exposure, risk, name it all. That's why you experts are there. We want to remind ourselves that we are not valued correctly. We have assets that don't come into our balance sheets. That must change as we drive this change of the global financial architecture. I just want to remind ourselves about that. If you value an economy, Ghanaian economy, Kenyan economy, smaller than what actually it is, it means the headroom is limited for which you can access financing. That must not be the case going forward. That's number one. And we expect the institutions of ours, Professor Aroma, to assist us, together with your colleagues, in valuing us correctly. Very important. Number two, very dry. We want to see a lower cost of capital. No debate about that. Engraved in what we do, the changes we drive, we want to see a lower cost of capital, a fair cost of capital. Africa is currently discriminated against in the pricing of capital. Of course, it's connected somehow to the risk assessment. But even then, same business, same sector, same profiling, everything, gearing similar, we pay more. Increasing the cost of doing business in our countries, on our continent, inhibiting the much needed growth of our economies. Not accepted. So let's address that. It's number two. Dry as it is. Combinations of funds, the SDRs we're talking about, everything that we're hearing, this must not lose us, or we must not lose it along the way. Number three, someone may say this is controversial, but it's not. And I think my fellow colleagues who lead countries are aware that in Africa we're wasteful. Generally, we're wasteful. We cannot dictate what an individual does with their money. But when these institutions lend, continue to lend, the new ones we create lend to us as African countries, we want to encourage ourselves and you not to lend for consumption expenditure. Let's focus the credit for revenue generation. Let's not support businesses, economies veering too much on luxury expenditure. We must focus on basics, growth, production, revenue generating expenditure, for which credit must be availed and priority given for that. Strongly believe in that. Number four, very dry, very simple. Africa must buy from itself. We must do business with each other. We have an inherent tendency when we want to buy something, procure something, to think of a former colonial master, to think of overseas. We must look inside. We must do business with each other. We are the continent that trades, invests in itself the least. President Ruto talked of our critical minerals, which are important for the green energy revolution. And most times the meetings that President Nana talked about we go to is to attract FDI. And the perception of FDI is from Europe, is from America, is from Asia. FDI, foreign direct investment. Maybe let's change the name and call it our own investment mobilization efforts. Find your own name. I don't care the name you give it. So let's look around ourselves. Let's trade with each other more. Let's exchange the import-export list from one another at a central level, even at a banking financial institutions level, Professor Rom. That must be almost a mundane thing to do. And I think it will answer partially to what President Nana said, God helps those who help themselves. We don't read the Bible and we want a good life, but we don't want to work for that. It's an inherent contradiction, I suggest. And I think lastly, I would suggest that we must time frame what we're doing in this reform. Time frame, clear working path, implementation plan, and be rigid about it. Time is not on our side. When we've done these things, we will grow our economies. We will create jobs for our youthful population. We will create more business opportunities with our own African businesses. And then we can provide sustainably social support for the weak, the sick, the old, the retired, and the young in terms of education for our population. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and I would like really to stay in this room with all of you to continue harnessing your wisdom, because we can see that you are truly taking us to the real issues that we need to look at. Allow me now, with no other protocol, to invite on the stage His Excellency Lejeune Belambela, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Cameroon, to represent His Excellency Paul Biya and deliver a short remark on his behalf. Your Excellency, you are invited on the stage.
Excellences, Monsieur le Président Nana Akufo-Addo, Président de la République du Ghana et champion des institutions financières africaines, Excellences, Monsieur le Président de la République, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, le Cameroun se félicite de la désignation depuis 2020 du président Nana Akufo-Addo, président de la République du Ghana, comme champion de la mise en œuvre des institutions de l'Union africaine. Mon pays, le Cameroun, apprécie à sa juste valeur les efforts qu'il déploie en l'opérationnalisation de ces importantes institutions financières africaines prévues par l'acte constitutif de l'Union africaine, en particulier le Fonds monétaire africain, FMA, la Banque centrale africaine, la BCA, et la Banque africaine d'investissement, BAI. Monsieur le Président, mon pays associe sa voix à celle des précédents orateurs pour féliciter et vous rassurer quant à notre engagement commun à œuvrer inlassablement afin de relever les défis liés au fardeau de l'endettement insoutenable et l'accès restreint au crédit abordable favorable au développement de notre pays. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, le président Biya, président de la République du Cameroun, pense que dans un contexte marqué par des crises multidimensionnelles, les appels à la réforme de l'architecture financière internationale, les offres de financement inadaptées aux besoins de nos économies et l'existence d'une cinquantaine de monnaies non convertibles en Afrique, notre continent a véritablement besoin des instruments de financement qui offrent des prestations adaptées à ces réalités, à ces défis climatiques et sécuritaires. À ce sujet, le chef de l'État camerounais, dont je porte ici le message, son Excellence Paul Biya, vient d'engager le processus de ratification par le Parlement, les institutions juridiques de l'ensemble des institutions financières de l'Union africaine, notamment en ratifiant le protocole et les statuts du Fonds monétaire africain. La ratification de ces instruments juridiques de la Banque centrale et de la Banque africaine d'investissement sont en bonne voie, ainsi que la finalisation du dépôt de ces instruments à la Commission de l'Union africaine. Mon pays en appelle par conséquent les autres États membres à suivre cette voie, en même temps qu'il se propose d'accompagner la Commission de l'Union africaine et nos champions des institutions financières dans la conduite d'une campagne diplomatique active à l'endroit des États membres qui ne sont pas encore partis aux instruments juridiques des institutions financières africaines. Le Cameroun, dit le président, voudrait également suggérer qu'il soit désormais inscrit à l'ordre du jour de l'ensemble des rencontres de notre Union le point sur l'état d'avancement de la mise en œuvre de nos institutions financières, comme venait de nous dire le président Nana Akufo-Addo. Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, permettez-moi de revenir spécialement sur le Fonds monétaire africain, dont mon pays abrite le siège, pour relever que dans la démarche d'une opérationnalisation rapide de cette importante institution pour les économies africaines, exposées à des crises mondiales répétitives, le Cameroun vient de mettre en place un groupe de travail conjoint pour le suivi de la mise en œuvre de l'élaboration d'un plan d'action assorti d'un chronogramme de démarche des activités du Fonds monétaire africain. Cette démarche reste bien sûr entendue assujettie d'une part aux orientations que nous donnera le président Nana Akufo-Addo, champion de la mise en œuvre des institutions financières de l'Union africaine, et d'autre part à l'élaboration de la conclusion d'un mémorandum d'entente avec la Commission de l'Union africaine pour rendre pleinement fonctionnel ce groupe de travail conjoint. L'ensemble de ces actions, Monsieur le Président, vient à rendre le Fonds monétaire africain opérationnel afin de relever les défis liés à la stabilité économique, à la gestion des crises financières sur le continent, de renforcer la croissance macroéconomique et le développement du commerce interrégional africain. Nous devons également œuvrer pour une opérationnalisation en grandeur nature de la ZELCAF, la zone de libre-échange continentale, si nous voulons que notre continent avance dans le progrès des échanges commerciaux. En définitive, la mise en place rapide de ces importantes institutions financières permettra à notre continent de pouvoir faire face à ses vulnérabilités et à réussir son décollage économique endogène. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Lejeune Belambela, for those eloquent words, and you clearly indicated the commitment of Cameroon to support the process towards the establishment of the African Union financial institutions. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with no other development, allow me now to move to the next agenda item, that is the launch of the African Alliance of Multilateral Financial Institutions, the Africa Club. I would like to, first of all, acknowledge the fact that listening to our leaders, there is a convergence of view that these institutions need to be strengthened, and today we are at a moment in our life where we are strengthening those institutions by setting up the Alliance for Multilateral Financial Institutions. In that perspective, allow me to invite on the stage first Mr. Manuel Moses, who is the CEO of the Africa Trade and Investment Development Insurance, ATD. Second, Ms. Samilia Zubairu, the President and CEO for the Africa Finance Corporation, represented by Mr. John Martin Ndaulo. Mr. Martin. Next on the stage is Mr. Hope Murera, the Managing Director of ZEPRI. Mrs. Hope. Fourth, the man that everybody recognizes here in the room, and who is one of the leaders that is championing Africa's transformation, Professor Benedict Orama, the President and Board Chairman of the African Export-Import Bank. Fifth, we call Dr. Konei Karekezi, the Group Managing Director and CEO of the Africa Reinsurance Corporation, Africa Re. Lastly, we call on the stage Mr. Tiano Habib Anne, who is the CEO and Managing Director for Shelter Afrique Development Bank. Allow me now to give the floor, first of all, to His Excellency Professor Benedict Orama, the Chair of the Alliance, the African Alliance of Multilateral Financial Institutions, for his remarks. President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremony. Excellency, Heads of State, Excellency, Deputy Chairperson of the Monique, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Before I start, let me inform President Akufo-Addo and President Ruto that conference, economic conference they're talking about, we will be one of the sponsors of that conference. So, it is my genuine pleasure and honor to address you on the momentous occasion marking the birth of the Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institutions, also known informally as the Africa Club. For so many years, these institutions have operated as lone wolves. We operated without recognizing that we serve the same people. But today, we turn a new page. We recognize that there is strength in unity, that will be supporting our continent better when we pool our resources together, that we defend our continent and defend our interests better when we pool together. The alliance is coming together of African financial institutions set up by treaty amongst African states in response to the inadequacies of the global financial architecture. It is therefore truly symbolic that the alliance is being launched today during this very important dialogue on the reform of the global financial architecture and the establishment of the African Union financial institutions. The members of the alliance, which include the Africa Finance Corporation, African Export-Import Bank, Trade and Development Bank Group, African Insurance Corporation, Africa Trade and Investment Development Insurance, and ZEPRI, have come of age in the past decades with a collective balance sheet of over $60 billion, deployed especially to address and meet the critical trade and investment gaps across the continent. The alliance aims to collaborate to address Africa's development finance needs, promote the interests of member states, advocate for Africa on global financial issues, develop innovative financing tools, support sustainable finance strategies, and coordinate debt management negotiations. The alliance's formation underscores Africa's commitment to self-reliance and sustainable economic development, leveraging homegrown solutions and resources for the continent's advancement. I think we have given practical meaning to President Akufo-Addo's admonition today that God helps those who help themselves. We started to help ourselves first. I can assure you that the alliance's mandate and objectives converge on a singular mission, which is to catalyze Africa's sustainable development and economic empowerment through strategic collaboration on concerted action. We aim to protect and promote the interests of our member states and shareholders, ensuring their voices are amplified on the global stage. We will stand as staunch advocates for Africa's interests in global finance forums, championing equitable treatment and the fair representation for the continent. We will jointly defend our collective interests and use the platform as an instrument for learning and sharing of experience. We will work together to develop unique solutions and joint financing tools and instruments tailored to Africa's unique developmental needs and pool our resources for their effective deployment. We pledge to devote our entire energy as the Alliance to be agents for the promotion of the continent's interests. We would like to thank His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for his unflinching support for African multilateral financial institutions reflected in today's historic occasion. He and his colleagues, the presidents who are here with us, will witness the launch of this alliance and the signing of a declarative statement by our members announcing our commitment to the principles and objectives behind the establishment of the alliance. We would also like to express our immense gratitude to the African Union Commission for making this event possible and for supporting the work of the members of the alliance. On behalf of all the members who are here, we would like to thank you again for your support and for your joining us on this historic occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Orama, for those excellent remarks that you just put forward. You highlighted the critical role of the Alliance. I would like now to invite my dear brother, and he was called by President Ruto as one of the leaders of the Alliance, working for the continent tirelessly. And with your ovation, I would like to call on the stage the last member of the Alliance, Mr. Atmasu Tadese, the Group President and Managing Group Director of the Trade and Development Bank Group. My dear brother, you are invited. Thank you very much, Atmasu. And I recall the first time we met during the TICAD summit in Nairobi, you were already engaged in this process of transforming the continent. So thank you very much for the excellent work that you're doing. I would also like to thank Professor Orama for all the work he's doing. And President Ishilema gave you a very good task. And I would like to assure you, dear President, that Professor Orama has already started working on the credit rating agency for the continent. And I would like to clap for him for that and highlight the fact that he's always at the forefront of continental transformative processes. So thank you very much for that. Now I would like to kindly invite you, Madam DCP, and the heads of state to join the stage to witness the signing of the Alliance. You are kindly invited. Heads of states. Your Excellency, this is indeed a historic moment because we are witnessing the start of the Alliance, the African Alliance for Multilateral Financial Institutions. These institutions have committed to support the development of the continent and to strengthen the capacities of our member states in terms of the resources that are needed to accelerate productive transformation and economic diversification. The signing of the Alliance today is a critical moment, and we would like to take this opportunity to thank their excellencies for being with us today to grace this moment of their presence. You can sign, dear members of the Alliance. Historic moment indeed. We are very happy to be here and to see this alliance form today. So the Africa Club is aimed at supporting our continent to move towards Agenda 2063, and for that, we really would like to clap again for these institutions and to assure them of the support of the African Union to make sure that they are able to be capacitated enough to foster economic transformation within the continent. So, Your Excellencies, thank you very much. I think we have had that historic moment, and you are kindly invited to join your seats for the closing of our event today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we close the session.
This is a powerful product. As you, I like this. You must close.
With me. We first of all had the great privilege of listening to two of Africa's most eloquent and progressive leaders, William Ruto and Ichelema Hakainde, and also the decisions that hopefully will emanate from our meeting today, which will be important decisions for the growth of our continent. All of it has also been topped up by the launch of this alliance, which is a new development on our continent, but an extremely worthwhile and welcome one. We want to congratulate Rama and all the others on what they have done. And I have no doubt that it is going to be proved to be a very valuable addition to the institutions of our continent. Thank you all very much for coming, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all for being with us today. And we do hope that Thank you very much. Thank you for all. I got lost. I just got lost. You see, one, two. I have to go one, search for two, search for three, four. Sorry. But the name is there. The name is there.
No, I know.
And you know me.
I thought I did, yes.
You see? Next time